In this spreadsheet, I'm going to demonstrate how to use some of the simpler formulae in Excel. So what we have here is a list of some foods and some calorie details about each food. So all the foods are listed here in the left-hand column, column A. So the cell A2 contains the word food, and the A2 reference is up here on my left. Cell B2 contains the word measure, and then the remaining rows there, or the remaining values in row 2, are all the other labels about the weight in grams, the kilocalories, the fat, the carbohydrates, and the protein in the individual foods for the amount consumed. So the column A details is just the name of each food. See there, it starts in cell A3, first food, salad dressing, and it ends in cell A31. So that's a range of cells. And then the measures, whether it's teaspoons or ounces or cups or whatever, they're contained in cell B3 down as far as B31. So that's kind of the descriptive information. And then in column C, D, E, and F, as I said, are the various measurements for whatever units we're using. So in cell C2, we see that a teaspoon of salad dressing weighs about 15 grams. The kilocalorie measure is 25. The fat is 2, carbohydrates 2, and protein is 0. And the same then applies for the remaining products, or the remaining foods. So we have a range of cells down here. What we want to do is maybe do some simple calculations about that data. So I'm just going to color those cells, that yellow background for the minute. And on row 33, it says we have a total. So if you exactly ate what's on that list there, we can calculate the total amount of calories you've consumed. So I have an extra column there that's marked off that I don't need, so I'm just going to pick the ones I need. I'll just give it a slightly lighter color so it isn't as obvious. So what I want to do here, I said, is if you ate everything on the list in the quantities listed in column B, what's the total volume in terms of weight that you would consume? So we want to get the total of everything between cell C3 and C31. So in Excel, there are a number of ways you can do that, but the most efficient way of doing it is to use an inbuilt function called the AutoSum, or sum function. So we want to sum up this range of cells, and we want the total to appear in cell C33. So when you want to use any of those inbuilt functions, you go up to your toolbar and you look for, it's under the Home tab, okay, and you look for the AutoSum option. So under AutoSum, when you click on the drop-down list, as well as sum, it gives us average and count and max and min, and we'll be interested in all of those very soon. But the one we want at the minute is sum. And because you're clicked initially down in cell C33, Excel kind of guesses what you're trying to do. So it scans the list of values above it, or to its left, in this case above it, and it sees that there's a range of numbers between cell C3 and cell C31. So we can ignore cell C32. You notice that it's ignoring the description heading at the top, the weight label that's on top, above the data. That's because Excel, when it uses the sum function, the sum function can only work with numbers. So it ignores any text or dates or any mixtures like that. So that's why it's kind of using its inbuilt intelligence to choose the cells from C3 to C31. So I'm going to just go down as far as C31. I'm going to ignore cell C32 because it's going to be a blank cell on a blank row that won't be used. So when I press the return key or the enter key after the sum, it gives me a total of 4,486. And there's a 0.05 there as well. Now, if I want to do another sum of all of the remaining columns, I want to add up column D, column E, column F, and column G. I could go in and build a sum function the same way, another sum function. So you see up here where you have the equal sum C3, C31. That's what's called the sum function. So it's an inbuilt feature that allows us to add numbers or a range of numbers in each case. But instead of just going through that same process again for the remaining 4 columns here, because you've told Excel what you want to do in the first column, and because the blocks of cells for the remaining part of the exercise are all directly to the right of this column, and the number of cells, the starting point is always row 3 and the ending point is always row 31. There's a feature in Excel that allows us to what's called replicate the formula. So what we've done here is given it an example formula to apply to this block of cells. And once you've given it this example formula, if there's similar tasks to be completed in columns D, E, and F, and G, then we can use that formula as our starting point. And when you float over the cell where the formula is, you'll notice now there's a white cross on it, a thickish kind of white cross. But if you float over the bottom right hand corner, you'll see that the white cross becomes a black crosshair. So it's a smaller black crosshair. And when you're in that position at the bottom right hand corner of a cell where the little dot is, you're then in a position to tell Excel that you want a similar formula for the remaining 4 columns. And the way you simply do that is by dragging to your right. And what happens then is the formula is replicated. So what that means is a similar formula is built in, say, in column D. And in the column D case, it's the sum of D3 to D31. Whereas if we go back to the previous column, it's the sum of C3 to C31. And then in column E, the sum function says E3 to E31. And similarly in F and G, the formula adapts to the circumstances. So Excel has this inbuilt feature to allow you give it an initial formula, and then if there's other formula or other calculations that have a similar purpose with the kind of a block of cells that are in the same shape. In other words, in all our cases here, we're starting at row 3 rather, and we're going down to row 31, and that applies to all 4 columns. So therefore, when you highlight the original cell, so this is your initial base cell or your source cell. When you have the formula entered in that cell, you can then replicate it or copy it to the remaining cells that are of interest to you. So if we consume everything on that list of foods, we'll consume a total of 100 grams of protein and 976 grams of carbohydrates and 246 of fat, and so on and so forth. So that's the total. So we use a sum function for the total. For the average, there's another inbuilt function called average. So it's a similar process, but you just have to be a small bit more careful now that when you try to use the average function, it may select this entire range of cells as its kind of intended target, whereas you don't want the values in row 32 and row 33, so you'll actually shorten the formula. Let's try it anyway. So we go to the same place again, up where AutoSum is, and we click on the drop down arrow, and we see average is there. And initially it's just getting the average of the cell above it. And the reason it's doing that is because this blank row here in row 32. So what you want to do is ignore its suggestion. Its suggestion, you just want to get the average of C33. But what you want to do is get the average of everything from C3 down as far as C31. So 154, whatever it is the average. What we can do here is we can fill it to the right. In other words, replicate it. So in each case, this was a sum. This is an average. The next one will be a max. So we'll do the max and the min first before we go near the remaining parts of it. We hit the home, open the home tab, and we choose auto sum again. And this time from the list we choose max. So again, max, what it's doing is it initially thinks that the cells you're trying to get the max of are the ones on row 33 and 34. But you don't want to do that. You want to get from C3 down to C31. And then press return. And lastly, similar for min, the minimum value, same idea. And you go for auto sum again, and this time choose the min function from it. So like the other cases, sorry, I'm in the wrong cell there, so I better just skip that. I didn't move down to the target cell. I was in that cell by mistake where the largest value is. So back up to the function list, choose min, and again it thinks that it's the 3 cells before the blank row, before row 32 are your intended target, but no they're not. You want to get everything between C3 and C31. So now we've given it a sample sum function, filled it right to replicate it, so that similar formulae apply in the other columns. And now we've given it the average, the max, and the min. So what you can do here is you can treat them all in one. You could do it separately like I'm showing here now. We do the average first, followed by the max, the largest for the max, followed by the min. But I won't do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do it all in one move. So what I'm going to do is highlight the 3 cells with the original 3 formulae for the average, the max, and the min. And a similar idea is we're going to go to the bottom cell of that block of cells. Okay, so 3 of them are highlighted from C34 down to C36. And in this case, rather than highlighting the first one on its own and replicating it, and then followed by the second, followed by the third, we're going to replicate them all in one move. So that reduces our chances of making a mistake. So as you can see now over here in column G, the first formula in there is a sum function. The second formula in that's in cell G34 is an average function. Below that, it's a max function. And below that, it's a min function. So that makes it quite straightforward. Now, the only other element of this spreadsheet I'm going to edit is, you notice that some of these cells have, say, 2 values or 2 numbers after decimal point. Other cells have nothing. So I'm just going to do a quick highlight of all the cells, and I'm going to format them, choosing format cells. And because they're number, I'm going to confine them all to 2 decimals after the, or 2 values after decimal place. So I'll OK that. That'll fix that. Okay, it's also made them currency, which I didn't want them to do. So I better undo that for a moment. Go back in again to format cells. And I should have chosen number there, I hope. And I'm going to make it 2 decimal places. And that's it done. So that's the end of this video clip on how to create a simple formula to add up values using the sum function to get the average, the max, and the min.